If we can get everybody to have a seat. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir. We do have a quorum, and we have a couple of alternate members today.
Okay, if you'll
I'd like to welcome Kelly Selman filling in for Bill Hale, and then also we have Moji Haddad filling in for Mike Knowles.
Great. Well, welcome. And I'm going to ask everybody to stand, and in memory of what happened 13 years ago, we're going to have a moment of silence, and then our Vice Chair will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiances. Thank you. Okay, our first action item today is going to be the approval of the August 14th, 2014 minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. There's no items on the consent agenda. And before I turned it over to Michael, I did want to take this opportunity to thank Victor Vandegrift and the Commission for bringing their meeting to Dallas as part of their road show. You know, it's important for our region to have the opportunity to attend those meetings, to witness the business of TxDOT, and also have the opportunity to weigh in. Victor Vandegrift has been a wonderful champion for transportation, especially for the needs of our region, and we appreciate his commitment to continue to be a great asset for us and help us achieving our goals. And I especially wanted to thank those individuals and recognize them that delivered our regional message. Kenneth Barr, Ms. Bernice Washington, Charles Emery, Mayor Athis, Doug Athis, and also Councilwoman Von Sill Jones Hill. And I want to say thank you all for coming out. And I also wanted to recognize our staff, Michael and his staff. You know, Michael's always there to deliver our concerns and stress the importance of our needs to the Commission, and we just want to say thank you, Michael, to you and your staff for doing that. So we'll move to item number 3, orientation.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for those kind words. We will later on in the agenda talk about that presentation. Several of you were able to see former Secretary Card and former Congressman Guerin in the region yesterday. It was really interesting. You were able to get Secretary Card, obviously very close to the President. You got him to speak the day before the anniversary of 9/11, which is really amazing. And we're going to talk a lot about toll roads today. When Pete Guerin was a congressman, and the headlines of the newspaper was Dallas-Fort Worth is going to have to build toll roads in order to deal with growth. The congressman and I had a good relationship, and he said, well, Mr. Morris, I'd like to see you in my office. And we walked through the financial forecasts. I think that was close to 18 years ago, and we're back to that situation today. But the fact that you had Secretary Card and former Congressman Guerin, former head of the Army Guerin, in a very, what I heard, emotional presentation yesterday is very nice. Apparently they said nice things about Dallas-Fort Worth leading the country in innovative transportation, and it was nice for the Secretary to do that. Let me get to your Director's report. TxDOT is thinking about making some changes to their district boundaries. They're thinking about going from 3 Highway Department districts in our region to 2, Dallas and Fort Worth, and then Hunt County would no longer be in the Paris District. They're also thinking about making their districts 12 counties to match the 12 counties of your boundary, obviously keeping the Dallas District and the Fort Worth District. So the Chair, Chairman Cantrell, has permitted us to hold a workshop at 1 o'clock next month. The reason why that's at an odd time is you'll be at the Irving Conference. The Irving Conference is paying for your attendance to the conference and your lunch. So upon completion of lunch, we'll meet at 1. Because we want to talk about it during the business meeting of the RTC, we'll have the workshop from 1 to 2, and your business meeting will start at 2 instead of 1 o'clock at that location. So we'll spend some time and give TxDOT an opportunity to present to us the benefits of that and some other things they may do internally to their organization to assist the region. So I think that's very interesting. If, in fact, you're interested in what TxDOT has to say, then we would put something on your agenda in November so you can at least weigh in with regard to a new Dallas district and a new Fort Worth district, if that's something you want, previous to TxDOT addressing the legislature starting in January. The Tiger grants have been delayed. We should hear in about a week or two. They were previously supposed to be announced, but we should hear soon. We remain hopeful. We've competed for Tiger grants very well against our brothers and sisters across the country. And then item 3, I just remind you, here's your workshop from 1 to 2, and your RTC business meeting will be 2, and staff will try to keep it short, because I know some of you may be spending time in the morning at the conference. I hope you do anyway. So we'll try to be sort of an all-business sort of notion, if we can, at your October RTC meeting in Irving, the details of which we will give you so you have address and so on and so forth. We'll work with the City of Irving to do that. I'm not going to present the other items. I'm going to drift down to recent correspondence. I want to thank Judge Hill. She invited Jesse and I to come to their transportation workshop and talk about the regional for-hire program, and I remain hopeful we'll create a partnership with the City of Dallas and moving ahead with both Dallas's interest and the regional interest in for-hire services. And then lastly, you have blue sheeted at your place. A letter came to Mr. Eastland from the Secretary of Transportation. I think this is very exciting as the Secretary works with Congress on new funding for transportation. The Secretary wishes to advance the infrastructure bank notion and is looking for public-private partnerships. So we're going to prepare a response from your chairman back to the Secretary. I have 5 potential projects that we'll be reaching out to the implementing agencies to see if they're interested in submitting. One is going to be high-speed rail between Fort Worth and Dallas. Second is a TxDOT Southern Gateway project. Third is the 635 project between US 75 and Interstate 30, what we call Phase 3 of the 635 project. We're going to talk to NTTA to see if they wish to submit the Trinity project, because it may be an innovative way to potentially finance that project, using advanced tools beyond even TIFIA to accomplish that. So we obviously won't submit it without talking to NTTA. And then we will talk to the transit agencies in the cities on the Cotton Belt corridor to see if there's some interest in submitting that, because as the T gets their full funding grant agreement, they may have a better and cheaper way to fund the cash flow of that project through the infrastructure bank than through their own bonding of funds. But again, we're not going to do anything until we confirm with these 5 parties or these 5 projects. The Secretary obviously came to the City of Garland as part of his outreach. He will return for the Tower 55 groundbreaking, and it'd be interesting if we can get some consensus and support the Secretary. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll reach out and see if I can get those 5 or some set of projects back to the Secretary's office so they can start assessing this. I am sure what your national government is doing is what is the interest across the country, so they can size with Congress what this potential will be. And remember, if anyone has patient money to fund transportation projects, it should be the national government. And as you all know, with TIFIAs, 5 years of no payments and 5 years of low payments, often a project can make it or break it just on the financing of the particular project. TxDOT backstop the Chisholm Trail bonds for NTTA, and it saved $400 million in interest payments. That built a lot of the Chisholm Trail project. So this is a big deal, and please work with me and see what the chairman wishes to do with regard to that. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there on the director's report and see if there are any questions.
Any questions? Danny?
Well, this is not necessarily a question, but just before we get into all the action items, wanted to call everybody's attention that there a save the date went out, I think early this morning, on the consecutive ribbon cuttings and celebration for opening of North Tarrant Express parts 1 and 2. It'll be on October the 4th, Saturday morning, beginning I think around 9 or 10 o'clock. We'll start at the east end and have consecutive ribbon cuttings all the way down the expressway, and then end on the North Riverside Bridge with a celebration. I believe that there'll be folks both from around the region. I know Mayor Price will be there as well.
Well, we'll get that information to April, and she'll send it out to you. You may already get it before we give it to you, but obviously that, I'm thinking Mayor Trevino, that was the watershed mark of moving ahead with infrastructure. I commented to Bill Hale this month. Yesterday. I was going to make a comment earlier. Everyone knows where they were on the original 9/11. I don't know where I was on Tuesday, but I know where I was that day. Yesterday I told Bill, because the leadership of when you took your initiative to build public-private partnerships, I've estimated you've saved $1 billion in roadway construction, because remember, you started building them as the economy was worsening and the interest rates were low and the competition was great. And competition's a wonderful thing in the private sector. And if you sum up those bid prices compared to if you were going to do it a year from now, it's probably about $1 billion in savings that you had. So it's all about timing with regard to that. So I think it is a very important project, Councilman. I'm glad you bring it to our attention, and we'll get those dates out to everybody.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Michael. We'll move to item number 4. Jesse's going to present to us Collin County Public Transit Program Extension, and it is an action item.
Good afternoon. Today I'll be requesting your action to extend a short-term public transit program in Collin County. Just a little bit of background. Collin County Area Regional Transit, or CCART, provided public transportation in Collin County until June of 2013. They stopped providing service rather abruptly, and at that time they had about 1,200 registered riders. So in 2013, you approved a plan for service to continue until September 30th of 2014, which is in just a few weeks, so riders and cities could make alternative plans. Texoma Area Paratransit, TAPS, and Yellow Cab have been providing that service for the last year, and the customers of these two services are primarily seniors and individuals with disabilities. So the area we're talking about here is in the green. It's the southwestern portion of Collin County. Is generally outside of DART service area, although we are talking about Plano in this conversation. And the blue and gray portions of Collin County are already receiving service from TAPS. The cities that are impacted are listed there on the right, just for your information. So the transition that we've been working on for a year involved a lot of partners working together. The impacted cities were trying to decide what kind of service they needed, and they were identifying funding sources. DART and TAPS, who are already providing some service in that geography we talked about, worked on absorbing customers into their existing services, and then also worked on alternative service arrangements with the cities that I had listed in the previous slide. And Yellow Cab, who's listed there at the bottom, they have continued to provide taxi voucher trips for customers that have no other alternative. Although most riders and cities have already made the transition, there are still a few loose ends to tie up. So staff is requesting a 60-day extension of the program using money we already have. This will give cities and the transit providers and the riders time to make those final commitments and make other plans if they need to. And we as staff will work to continue to transition those riders. Of the 1,200 or so we started with, we think there's less than 100 left who haven't transitioned on to another service. So the action I'm requesting today is to approve the extension of C-Cart replacement services using existing funds programmed for this effort until November 30th of 2014, which is 60 days. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Mayor?
No, I was going to make a motion if there are no questions.
Make it.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second? Duncan, did you second? Duncan second. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Move to agenda item number 5, Transportation Emission Reduction Summaries for the Region State Implementation Plan. And this is Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is just a little quick summary of what's kind of been happening a little bit behind the scenes as we try to respond to TCEQ, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, as they're currently underway to develop their most recent state implementation plan, or the air quality plan, for our 10-county non-attainment area. Those counties that are subject to non-attainment that have been classified by the Environmental Protection Agency are shown in pink. Back in the summer of 2010, that's in 2012, that's when EPA actually designated the 10-county area under the most recent standard, including adding Wise County to the mix from what we previously had. And that basically set off a series of events, one of which is that it gives us an attainment year of 2018, and it also requires the state to submit an air quality plan on how the region's going to meet that attainment year by the summer of 2015. So between 2012, probably earlier, the state has been working on developing our plan. They're wrapping up their details in terms of what that will consist of. I can say that right now their modeling suggests that there's no need for any additional strategies above and beyond what we're already working on or have planned to do by 2018. But the state, before they go and finalize their documentation, take it out to the commission, they always ask, well, what are ideas that we can consider to be incorporating into the plan? What are the things that can be inventoried that we can document and showcase the EPA and the public, the types of things that we're working on or towards to reach that attainment milestone? Many things are just not able to be quantified, or we're not able to take specific emission benefits and put it into the model and spit out a particular ton reduction. So what staff did is that we started an effort in response to that request back in September, starting with your technical committee. We went around and had some brainstorming with staff internally. We came out to you in December, kind of solicited some ideas that you might have had, or had a Texas Register request for the general public to throw us some ideas, went out to your public meetings back in March timeframe, and we collaborated and compiled a bunch of ideas that were transmitted to us and submitted for consideration. Those ideas were received over about 206 ideas. Some of them were, hard to really digest or really make any sense out of, but we basically categorized as best we could all these 206 ideas and put them into a particular, say, source category. So for what this council would be mostly focused on was about 133 ideas on the on-road or car and truck, automobile, over-the-road type suggestions. So then what we did internally is we networked with the rest of our internal department staff and broke those up, the 133 ideas, into how they fit into the rest of our department, asked each of the managers to kind of go through a qualitative assessment. You can see some of the assessment thoughts that we had when we were considering some of these ideas. And then we wrapped them up into what would be policies, projects, or programs that we could showcase and submit to TCEQ to be able to put into their documentation. So as I wrap up, I wasn't going to get into any detail of all the specifics. just to say and kind of reflect on, I think, what the accomplishments that the council has, accomplished over the last, 20 years since the Clean Air Act came out. And as we continue to think about and identify what are our new challenges, what are the new types of ideas that we could potentially focus on. But here's one page of, I think there's 14 categories here that came out of our assessment. A lot of these are your traditional type things that the council has funded in the past and have funding for in the future: grade separations, intersection improvements, intelligent transportation type systems, sustainable, big investment in sustainable development, congestion management process that Natalie has. And then we have, I don't know, this is, I think, just another 20 categories of ideas or elements that we put some paragraphs together and we documented for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Some of these things are still pilot programs. Some of these things, again, pilot program can't really quantify yet because we haven't really, identified what the benefits would be. But we're in good faith showing the TCQ and the state and the public that these are things that we're pursuing and looking into, and we hope that between now and 2018, if there's some emission benefits to be gained from some of these, that we're going to take that challenge to see if we can't get those. As I go across the country, I know with Michael as well too, I mean, this list is second to none. There's not another MPO in the country that is doing anything remotely to the same scale as this council is, so we greatly appreciate that, and everyone looks towards you guys for continued leadership. I'll just leave here as I wrap up that there's two ways that we could submit this information. If, for those that recall, the continual discussion about environmental speed limits, that was a commitment specifically in the air quality plan. Because we wanted to remove those, we had to go through a long process of substitution. Because the state, as I mentioned in my introduction, is not requiring or looking for any additional, say, assistance to reach attainment by 2018, what we've decided to do is submit these as we've done in recent SIPs in the weight of evidence section, which is very flexible. It shows good faith effort. They're summaries. They don't specifically identify the specific locations. And then we can take those benefits. So those benefits won't be tied to this air quality plan. But what you'll see later on from Chad McCowan, we can save these benefits from all these projects and use them for your transportation conformity. And Chad will show you that some of the results that we have on the plan amendment, that if we didn't have some of these at our disposal, then we would be facing some challenges in passing the conformity analysis on your long-range plan. So with that, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to provide the summary of the the comprehensive list of information that was transmitted to the TCQ.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Sandy?
Thank you. Chris, I just wanted to ask, you said that you're sending a list but with no commitments to emissions benefits, and is that because you can't quantify them or because you want to save them to use somewhere else, or could you?
Both. A little bit of, some of these we can't quantify, so like when we talk about like a diesel inspection and maintenance program, we're proposing a pilot program. We're not really sure exactly until we get into the pilot what the benefit could be, if it's even implementable. But then the ones that we can process and identify benefits, we have those. We have them tucked away so that we can use them for things like conformity or other substitution efforts of other types of strategies that are already committed into the air quality plan.
And why wouldn't we send those on if we can quantify them to be part of, because TCEQ doesn't want them or need them?
They're not needing them. And number two is then it would be double counting if we gave them to the air quality plan. And then let's say if we wanted to use those benefits for things that you guys are working on, like, again, conformity, we wouldn't be able to use those again because they're already, say, committed. They're already accounted for. So,
in the air quality plan.
So because the state doesn't need anything at this point, we're not necessarily suggesting that we give those because of the rigorousness of what we would need to do if we needed those benefits here in the next couple of years.
Okay,
So,
thanks for the further explanation.
Ms. Grayson, I think your question is excellent. Let me try this way, Chris, and see if this is.
Yeah.
If you pass them on as part of the state implementation plan, there's a good chance the state will come back and say, okay, now that we have these, your budget is now here. So when we go change the transportation plan and do air quality conformity, our transportation plan has to be below that particular budget. It's better to obviously, since it's a state implementation plan, for the state to meet the obligations to meet that state implementation plan. And then for us to use these measures, as you'll see, if you hadn't done this, you wouldn't be able to continue your transportation plan. Use the aggregation of these air quality strategies to bring your air quality plan into conformance. So they're both counting towards air quality benefits.
Yes.
It's not that the citizens aren't benefiting. We'd rather do the math as part of our conformity process than include it on the top as part of the state implementation plan. It gives you greater flexibility when you move forward with your transportation system. And you'll see that. We happen to be doing a plan amendment at this point. You'll actually see that, and when they present that, if they would flag that to the RTC, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Move to item number 6, People Mover Initiative. Tom Shelton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, good afternoon to you. And I want to bring an item to you today that was deferred from last month. Particularly over the last few years, staff continues to hear about challenges of projects across our region in making what we commonly refer to as that last mile connection, or particular activity centers that have challenges in moving people within those activity centers. And all of you are very familiar with those examples, such as the dark green line to Dallas Love Field Terminal connection, challenges within the Dallas Medical District connections, and other similar instances. So with Michael's leadership, back on June 27th, we elected to convene all those representatives together and see if there wasn't some symmetry and maybe some good reasons why maybe we should all partner together amongst all these 8 example projects across the region that might have some benefits. So on June 27th, under Arlington Councilwoman Catherine Wildman's chairmanship of this meeting, conducted a meeting where we had 60 people that attended with some other interested folks in the audience. And we really discussed 3 topics. We reviewed and had representatives that were able to provide us a lot of insights into 2 example projects in the region already. DFW Airport Skylink project, and then the Las Colinas Urban Center, and the fairly old, antiquated people mover system that they have. But they had some good lessons learned on how they originally procured that project and challenges in continuing and keeping in operation. We then heard presentations from 8 other projects in the region that we think could be real good candidates from some form of a people mover technology, which was really a broad family of different technologies, but we bring that all under the umbrella of a people mover. And then we had a very good roundtable discussion about is there any good reasons as to why we think maybe we should partner together, pursue a regional procurement approach, look at different benefits of having a single operator and a single maintenance contract, and really recognize benefits of cost efficiencies of the scale of joining together and long-term things such as minimizing spare parts and the like. And we then began having a discussion, maybe it might be wise to test some of those theories through the use of a pilot project. And as you've heard staff present before, there's an interesting opportunity at the General Motors project that I'll speak to again in a minute. Again, with Amanda Wilson's help and Kyle Roy of her staff, we conducted a survey using some of our high-tech tools, and I want to share with you some of those results of the survey. By far, the vast majority of the attendees there did agree that we should consider this people mover technology, again recognizing the benefits of the last mile connection and the real circulation needs of these dense activity centers. They all believe that we should bring that within Dan and Chad's Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and you'll see some of that in the upcoming update. They also all agreed, pretty much the same majority of folks think that there would be some real benefits of partnering together on those for the reasons I mentioned before, and you can see the percentage of the survey there. And then we said, asked a question about this idea of pursuing a pilot project at the Arlington General Motors facility, and you've all heard about the challenges of moving the vehicles off their assembly line at the end of the line, and they have to move it almost a little over half a mile to the east to the railhead to move those on to the Union Pacific freight operations for distribution across the country. And a slightly less majority, but a good majority still nonetheless thinks that would be a good thing to use that as a pilot project and test the industry and the technology that we're interested in. We then continued those discussions about lowering costs, and we got into some issues about some of those 8 representatives of those 8 projects began sharing some ideas that they had, that they were really concerned about meeting the needs of their specific project. And it could be quite possible that some of their projects are very unique based on their needs, and we may need to maybe address those in a one-on-one fashion. But nonetheless, we'll have those further conversations to see that. Of that smaller group of 42% that, again, were pretty focused on their individual projects, we then asked them some further questions about what it is you thought that was so unique about their project. And it really was kind of all across the board. So here's just some follow-up questions. And we'll be speaking following this workshop and maybe getting a better understanding about why they think their project may be different from a regional approach. So quickly in conclusion, next steps, and again, staff is very interested in this, assuming RTC support on this. Staff will be going over to the General Motors power plant here later this month, meet with plant management, with Mr. Taylor and other management staff, and getting a tour and learning more details about their challenges there, and having some dialogue about how can we move forward with implementing a pilot project there. And then again, for the remainder of this year, we're going to have some continuing one-on-one meetings with those project representatives, learn more about their project particulars, and how maybe we can really join hands together regionally and procure a procurement option. That all being said, we'll certainly do this in partnership with our transit authorities, who has an extensive amount of experience in rail technology. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Catherine, for your leadership on this project. Any questions?
Just to add, General Motors is not looking for any public sector money for them to be able to move people. They're actually taking their private sector money and willing to pool it and see what can be done. They spend between, I think, Tom, $2 and $3 million a year.
Correct.
Pulling cars off of the line, putting them on trailers, moving them half a mile, taking them off trailers. So what they're saying is, could we pool our money with what you're trying to do and see if there's a potential win-win of testing a people mover system and then no longer being the only assembly plant in the United States for General Motors not having their line at the railhead. So it's an exciting opportunity, and we're going to start kicking the tires and see where it takes us, and we'll be back for any and all actions necessary on how to proceed.
Danny?
Well, I may be the only one that's not smart enough to figure this out yet, but if you're moving vehicles from the line over to the railhead, are you talking about just the base mode of transportation with something else built on top of it? I mean, how does that translate to people moving around?
I think that's something that we're going to continue to explore. But in simple terms, you're familiar with the Skylink vehicle, so think of it in terms that the body itself would actually come off, and so the chassis, if you will, would be that vehicle that would carry the GM vehicles to that railhead.
Okay, thanks.
Mark, was that yours?
Yeah, I can certainly understand why people movers need to be addressed. I don't understand the commonality involved. I don't understand how it's common to have that people mover at Irving, for example, in the same technology or even perceived to be close to the technology of the rail mover. I don't know how, assume it is common technology, they're disparate in varied locations. How do we maintain? Where's the facility? I guess I don't understand what the purposes of the common approach as opposed to assisting or discussing or planning for each one specifically going forward.
Great question. Step one was, first, is there interest in completing the last mile of a 6.7 million person region going to 10? And the answer is yes. Question number two, is there any common technologies of application? There may not be, as Tom just articulated. We all don't need to use the DFW airport technology on all of our applications because we're not moving millions and millions of people as part of that particular process. So there could be different sizes. The point is, if there are, is there an opportunity for people to all co-procure, because you would have the benefit of a single operator, one security system, one security base, sharing of spare parts, one set of operators. So I'm just throwing this out. If Arlington elects to build a north-south people mover system to connect UTA to high-speed rail to the Centerport station, and the hospital district wishes to build a people mover system to connect the new hospital systems to the Trinity Railway system and light rail, and their specifications are the same, then they may wish to go together and share the economies of scale of the implementation. If the technologies are very different and acceleration rates are different and turning radii and so on and so forth, then you wouldn't be using the same technology. That's exactly the purpose that Tom would go into step 2. Step 1 is there interest? The answer is yes. Step 2 is there common technology applications? We'll soon find out. But General Motors is eager to see if there's an application and willing to donate a test track. So most times you're spending millions of dollars on a test track that is a throwaway. In this particular case, we have a test track that actually becomes a permanent piece of implementation. In the case of General Motors bringing vehicles directly to the railhead. And they're willing to put their money in and see if there's a win-win opportunity. And back to the councilman's question, the bottom of the people mover system is the technology to move the vehicles. The top of the people mover system is the part that would move people.
So last question. If, let's assume we do this, what is the cost to the RTC to do this? Is there a cost to us to do this?
Well, so far I don't have the dollar amount. What was the dollar amount the RTC approved? $1 million or so to advance the engineering and design a possible test track. That's all we've asked to date.
That's correct.
If there is this common interest, and we think there is, then we would have to come back and, is it RTC to pay or do the individual people of interest pay? But we have approval to pursue, with a public-private partnership with General Motors, some ability to see if, in fact, a version of the people mover system would have an application for both General Motors and maybe to Arlington or somewhere else as part of that process.
And I'm not stating a position on it, as I'm trying to understand in my mind how a people mover system around the medical hospital district would be similar in nature. I can see why it would be similar in nature to a people mover system in Arlington, rubber tire, bus, go into a joint, if that's what it is, but I don't understand how that's similar to the heavier or the rail connection or even the heavier at DFW. But that's...
Well, we had almost a dozen people of interest. They're all going back, noodling it around, and we'll see how those overlap, Tom, and
that's correct.
See if there's specifications of technology that can. I mean, in government, we're all being asked to do more with less. So is there a common thread or a regional interest of some form of a technology that people may wish to participate in? That's the question. If the answer is no, the answer is no. But if the answer is yes, then here's an opportunity to lower operating costs and lower inventory costs as part of the system.
Thank you. Kathy?
Oh, well, I was just going to add that, yes, that with the new technology and the fact that right-of-way is so critical in the metropolitan area, that this is a way, because the right-of-way, it doesn't take much. And so we need to move more people and get them out of cars, we know, just for all the reasons that we talk about every week, every month. So I think it's a regional issue that maybe this is the place to talk about it, and we can all glean from it. Will it all work together? I don't know, Mark. But it could be, and if it's to our advantage monetarily to do anything to save money to put something in to move people, I think it's worth discussing and really delving into. So that's the reason I thought that this venue would be the place that we ought to discuss it.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Okay, Michael, number 7, upcoming priorities.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. In the interest of time, I put 4 items in the same grouping, and I'll cover them pretty quickly. In November, you and the citizens of this state will be given an opportunity to vote on Proposition 1. 3 folks from the region have been asked to assist the state. Jungus Jordan is on a committee along with Judge Self and myself. The 3 of us, committee of 12 or so, I think, Councilman. We've had a couple meetings. We have one more next week. We're going to prepare a set of recommendations to the Commission. I would present these as good government principles to the Commission in advance of the election. Proposition 1, as you know, has to be formally allocated and cannot go to toll facilities. And I, as a staff person, have been silent on how anyone should, what they should do on that particular voting day. But as committee members, we're aiding the state in articulating the potential benefits and application of Proposition 1 to the state of Texas. If you have questions, we'll be happy to take them. We are moving ahead on the RTC, NTTA resolution. We do this every fall before the legislative session on what the next set of projects will be. I think Amanda's going to address this as well. We wish to advance Interstate Highway 635 between 75 and 30, what we used to call Phase 3 of the 635 project. Pick up any components of previous CDAs that are expiring, and then we're requesting NTTA, who already has CDA authority, do they wish to weigh in with regard to this particular item. So I think if Amanda doesn't talk about the deadline, I think it's action at your next meeting, but she'll correct me if I'm wrong. Third item is just to support our chairman and thanking all those that participated in the commission presentation. I thought it was a home run. In that presentation, we demonstrate $7 billion with a B dollars of annual benefits in transportation congestion savings to your transportation projects. April is going to send that presentation to you if she already hasn't. I talked to her earlier today. You will all get a copy of the presentation. Ms. Washington, Mayor Barr representing NTTA, Ms. Washington representing DFW International Airport, our chairman RTC, Mr. Emery Transit, Judge Hill focusing on how transportation and economic development work hand in hand through a real world example, and then Mayor Athas talking about the one project we're submitting as the CDA on 635. So you'll see the congestion maps and the quantification of benefits as part of that. It is very nice that the Commission invites us when they come to the region to hear from you, and I hope you will keep with that tradition, or I hope we keep to that tradition as we move forward. The final item is high-speed rail. Judge Hill and Judge Whitley are on the High-Speed Rail Commission. It too met recently in Dallas. I thought it was a fantastic meeting. Since that meeting, the notice of intent has been agreed to by the Federal Railroad Administration. So we are now in the environmental process along with the private sector. Private sector is focused on Dallas to Houston. The public sector is focused on Dallas to Fort Worth. Both of those environmental studies have begun. I think Mayor Franke, you and Tom should get together for maybe a subcommittee meeting in November. October is taken up on TxDOT's opportunity to speak to you with regard to having a Dallas district and a Fort Worth district that matches your 12 counties. So maybe in November we could schedule that to get the RTC up to date. We now have the 3-station concept approved by the statewide high-speed rail advocacy groups. If you remember, that wasn't necessarily the case 6 months ago. That now is their position as well. So the 3-station concept is alive and well. We've given about a dozen presentations to business communities in the last 3 months. Lots of excitement with regard to where this is going. I would like you to buckle your chair and just think ahead for just a moment on high-speed rail. Texas is coming back with the Oklahoma City to San Antonio and beyond high-speed rail. Early rumors are that maybe they're going to recommend grade separated high-speed rail from Fort Worth to San Antonio. So if you can imagine now, you have high-speed rail to Dallas, high-speed rail from Dallas to Fort Worth, and now high-speed rail from Fort Worth to San Antonio. What's in the middle of that system? It's the Fort Worth to Dallas piece that we talked about 2.5 years ago. And that piece now is the keystone to potential high-speed rail in Texas. So you go from a tail to actually be the main section. So Judge Hill and Judge Whitley, who are putting a lot of time on high-speed rail, you are working now on what might be the keystone of high-speed rail in Texas with DFW Airport in the middle. So we'll continue to monitor TxDOT's results on the Oklahoma City to San Antonio and beyond. And then I'm looking at my TxDOT brothers, and east-west high-speed rail needs to be integrated through some very complicated interchanges. And if the constitutional amendment passes, there's some improvements one may wish to do on those interchanges, and we certainly don't want to lose any time not having interchanges being able to be integrated with east-west high-speed rail, if you know what I'm saying. So there's a potential win-win around the corridor with regard to this initiative. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop there. Tom Shelton has worked very hard on the high-speed rail elements. He's our lead on it. He may want to add or subtract something that I said with regard to this. And I will take questions on our Prop 1 initiative, the resolution that we'll bring to you on the next group of projects to the legislature. I thought the tremendous work you and your colleagues did at the commission, talking about the importance of transportation, and then moving ahead on this very important high-speed rail initiative. So if there's any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll take them.
Judge, Michael, on the committee that's going to propose allocation, can you give us an example? Is that like between how much money go to rail, how much to roads, or what?
Good question. I think the big interest will be how much goes to, say, congestion, how much goes to maintenance, and how much goes to the energy sector. If you think back to what the Texas Commission did at the previous session, remember they said there were $5 billion worth of needs. That's what their shortfall was. $3 billion in congestion, $1 billion in maintenance, and $1 billion for energy areas of the state. The committee is tossing around, do you get that specific now, or do you get that specific later? But you're going to see something that says we should be dealing with urban congestion and the connectivity of the urban regions to the state system. We should obviously continue to focus on the maintenance of the transportation system. And obviously there's a great interest to repair previously deteriorated roadways. Mr. Jordan's made that pretty clear. And obviously future yet to be deteriorated roadways. The energy sector is producing 100% of this revenue. So the committee wishes to be sensitive to the energy sector, but they also wish to be sensitive to the roads that have already been deteriorated from the energy sector. How much detail we give now is being debated by the committee, but we want the money to go statewide because it's a statewide election, and we want it to be comprehensive or multi-purpose so everyone's voice can be heard as part of that process. I hope that answered your question.
Glenn, is that you?
Yes, I know this may sound like a broken record, but anytime anybody starts talking about formulas, I want to remind the committee that we were told as a region by the then chairman of the TxDOT, Rick Williamson, that we would never be penalized as a result of agreeing to be aggressive regarding tolls. That's right. And so as the calculation, if it pertains to road miles, lane miles, whatever it may be, I believe very strongly that even though we're not having to maintain those roads, or may not have even had to have put public funds into building them, that they should be counted toward whatever formula is used to allocate funds to this region. And so, again, I don't think we're getting that right now in maintenance. I believe the region has been penalized for being aggressive about being willing to use the toll as a way to expand capacity. And so please, as you're considering formulas, make sure that that point's made and that something that nobody forgets.
And taking your point one step further, Judge, your point is, you know, just because the North Tarrant Express has its own revenue source for maintenance, we still should be getting our original commitment of that maintenance, and the RTC should have the flexibility of either putting it into maintenance or putting it into capacity improvements as part of that process.
I would hope that as the formula or whatever method that they use in determining how that is going to be allocated, that it is also given a great deal, that local input is sought on how to, into the specific projects that are to be used to fund with that money.
I don't want to get too much into our report, but that point is pretty firm so far by some of us at the committee level.
That's great, Glenn. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Amanda's going to give us on, oh, Charles, I didn't see you. I'm sorry.
There was a rumor that there'll be one stop between Houston and Dallas. Where might that be?
I think that's, there's a Catholic school, a grade school. They have a little fishing program, and I think it's a outreach to 8th graders. That's the rumor I heard.
They got a good football team, right?
Yeah, there's a running back. He's 12. He's in 8th grade, and they get a hell of a program.
Okay. Item number 8, public participation plan revisions. Amanda.
Thank you very much. Today I'm going to be presenting an information item on our public participation plan. This is one of our federally required documents that we have to do as the MPO. We do update it every few years. So today I'd like to discuss and introduce some of our proposed revisions and gather your input and outline on these revisions, and then just our communications and outreach strategies in general. The public participation plan is really the document that guides us and how we seek information from stakeholders and the general public on our transportation plans and programs. It's required, as I said, through our federal legislation, although MAP 21 did not make any substantive changes to our public participation requirements. We also include things like Title VI and environmental justice principles in our public participation plan to make sure that we're incorporating all individuals into our planning process. But of course, we do seek to go beyond just what's required through a federal legislation because we really do want to have our plans be successful and seek input from lots of different individuals. We also include a language assistance plan that guides how we interact with individuals who are limited English proficient. So that means either they don't speak English as their native language or they are not able to read in English. So we do make special efforts there. As you know, we do a lot of different things to try to get out to the public. We don't just do public meetings, but we're trying to reach out to the news media, who covers a lot larger area than we could ever cover. We've been working on videos, and we go out to lots of community events. So we're really trying to be out in the community and get input from a lot of different areas. Our plan was last updated in March of 2010, and really over those last couple of years, technology has advanced very quickly, and that we're finding that communications trends have really changed over those last couple of years. And so we've been identifying more effective ways to reach and engage the public. One thing that really led to this revision was we've noticed over the last couple of years that fewer and fewer people are coming to our public meetings. There's times when we've had 2 people or 3 people in the room, and while we've had sometimes a very lively conversation and a very good conversation with those individuals, it does cost a lot of money for us to put on these public meetings and our staff time and all of the advertisements that go into it. So we really do want to be reaching more people and getting more people engaged for that investment. We brought this up during our last federal certification review when the Federal Highways and Federal Transit were here, and they agreed that there may be a bit of public meeting fatigue going on right now, just with all of the public meetings and information that people are asked to understand. So with our revision, we're really trying to maintain transparency, but improve the interaction that we're getting and really match the outreach opportunity to the significance of the milestone that we're asking for their input on. We've done a survey, so we've looked at how people wanted to interact with us. Email is by far the way that most people want to hear information about our transportation policies, all the way down to newspaper ads. Really, people do not think that those are very effective, but yet we are required to do those. So we'll continue doing them, but we're going to try some of these other things that go up this chart. We compared it to a survey that we did in 2007 and 2009, and email continues to be the most effective. So over the last, almost 10 years, people have thought that that's the most effective strategy. So I think that indicates focusing on getting more people to get the information by email and reaching out to more people. And then we asked people what is really their preferred strategy for receiving information, and again, email is the most preferred strategy. So we're looking at different things that we've done over the last couple of months to already start some of these things that we could do under our current public participation plan. We've added Google Translate to all of our websites. We've expanded our media list to include more community newspapers and minority newspapers. We've been looking at online ads and expanding our distribution list. So what we're really looking at is a concept of a network of networks. If we're trying to reach 6.7 million people, we can't know all of those people individually, but you all have networks in your daily lives. You have your constituents that have elected you. You have your community groups, your religious groups. But we are maybe not asking people specifically to, hey, here's our information. We know you want it because you've asked for it, but could you pass it on as well to people who you think might be interested? So that's what we really want to try with our revisions. So getting into the revisions, our goal is to really be more efficient and effective. So matching the content, strategy, and audience. So making sure that people are getting the information they want the way they want. So we're proposing to use more video and online strategies so that people don't have to always come to a public meeting. We're proposing to shift some to online review and comment opportunities, which is consistent with federal regulations, for routine items such as modifications to our Unified Planning Work Program or quarterly modifications to the Transportation Improvement Program, which we really don't receive many, if at all, comments when we go to public meetings, so that's maybe something that can move to an online strategy. And this would allow us to reserve public meetings for really the development of plans and programs and policies that are significant changes to what the RTC does. So we'll be looking at an administrative revision policy for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Unified Planning Work Program. This would be similar to the administrative revision policy that you already have for the Transportation Improvement Program. And then, these first three things that are listed on this slide are really minor clarifications or edits to existing policies. We put together an annual listing of obligated projects and we provide that to the public, but we don't say in our public participation plan that we provide it to the public, so we're just documenting that. But I think this last bullet here is important. So defining evaluation criteria for our public involvement efforts. So setting up performance measurement to really think, are we being effective in what we're doing when we're communicating to the public? So here's our timeline. We had public meetings at the start of this process in the summer where we did that survey and other things. So my team has been busy working on developing the revision. We started our 45-day comment period at public meetings this week. We're here for your information today, and we can't bring it back to you next month because of that 45-day comment period. So we're taking any and all comments, and we'll be back in November for action. And so what we're interested in from you is any comments on the outline of the revisions that I've presented today. What content that, if we provided it to you to share with constituents or other groups, what kind of content do you think that we should be sharing with you to do that sort of thing? And any ideas that you have for further enhancing our outreach and communication. So with that, here the plan will be posted shortly on this website, so you'll be able to review the entire plan, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Mayor?
Couple of maybe suggestions. First, I want to applaud the move toward, I think you're doing that anyway, even though the policy maybe doesn't call for social media and some other things. You're doing a good job of doing that, and I applaud the effort to modernize that. For me, my single biggest impediment to getting people interested in this is the complexity of the issue. Oftentimes the caption for what is to be talked about requires, and you know, I know all of you guys understand the caption of all these RTC items the first time you read it. I tend to not. It takes me a minute to read them. And so for a citizen, and I know that's something you guys probably struggle with all the time, but that to me is the hardest thing. You know, if boil it down to a one sheet or something that's very, very easy to understand. Hey, we're talking about possible train near your house, or something like that that is easily digestible. I mean, right. So, I mean, that is something that's important. Another couple of ideas would be, you know, maybe we could have it where, and I know these come up at certain intervals, but maybe you could have a scheduled public hearing date once a quarter. And so that way, instead of having 5 over a 6-week period, you could have, you know, everybody would know that on this day, you know, the first Tuesday of every quarter is a public hearing, then you could consolidate them. And I don't know if that would violate 9 federal regulations, but it seems like that would be a good way to actually get people to participate. And then another on geography, I don't know if it makes sense to have, you know, maybe one place in downtown Fort Worth and one place in downtown Dallas that were constant locations, just because both have access to transit, both are generally centrally located, and both have, you know, if you just draw a semicircle, they're the or draw a circle, they're the closest to the greatest number of people. And then you can have satellite, you know, in Carrollton, Plano, Wiley, Boyd, wherever. But I think those are some ideas I'd like to see at least explored. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that input, Mayor. Any other questions or input? Okay, Amanda, if you want to move to item number 9, legislative update.
Right. I don't do back-to-back items too often, so this is
great.
Nice to just move on. Well, federal and state legislative update. When I was here last month, I said that when Congress came back from their August recess, they would have one issue left related to transportation, and that would be appropriations for the next fiscal year, which are set to expire on September 30th. If you remember, we have an extension of our MAP 21 and our Highway Trust Fund expenditures. So this week, when they came back, there was a continuing resolution introduced that would take federal spending through December 11th, 2014, and that would just be a clean extension, no policy issues. It would just extend current funding through the end of the year. So that gets everyone through the election, and then we'll deal with this after that. So that's the one update on the federal legislative side. So what we really wanted to talk about today is the draft RTC legislative program for the 84th Texas Legislature. And we provided a copy of this as an electronic item in your packet. This is just an information item today, so we'll be looking for input, and then, as Michael alluded to, looking for action. You know, if we're pretty close and there's not a lot of comments or questions that the RTC has next month, if there's a lot more work that we need to do, you guys don't like the draft that we've put together, then it may fall to November that we have to work on some issues. So we've put a summary of the actively pursue items here. We've again separated into 3 categories: actively pursue, support, and monitor. So we have 4 potential issues for the actively pursue. One would be to retain limited authority for TxDOT to enter into public-private partnerships. If you remember, we now have to ask for action on specific projects. So we've identified a couple, Interstate 635 East, as Michael had mentioned earlier, and also, as he mentioned, the Trinity Parkway. If that was a request, which NTTA already has CDA authority, but if they were to request that they'd like to have TxDOT at least have that ability, then that could be a project. And then any existing projects that have already gotten legislative authority to move forward but are not going to meet the very rigid targets on environmental review, bidding, letting, that sort of thing. So that could include North Tarrant Express, the Southern Gateway, and Loop 9. So those were outlined in your packet. So then the second item would be to support full funding of the Air Check Texas program. And, you know, we're continuing the legislative appropriations request from TCEQ to the legislature continues the 87.5% cut of this program. So we would be looking for one probably out of 4 recommendations that we have, either just for the legislature to appropriate the revenue that they're withholding to certify the budget, to look at could we exchange this state fee for a county emissions fee that would be collected and administered locally. Could you change the collection point now that we'll have in March of next year a consolidated sticker with your inspection and registration? Could this fee just be collected by the county tax assessor collector at that time and retained by the county? Or look at expanding the eligibility of this program to include innovative congestion projects. So since this is really a county issue, we're going to be holding a meeting at the end of this month for bringing the counties in, and we've sent out invitations for the county judges to come in and talk about this. So I think we'll have a better recommendation next time on one of those strategies to pursue. The third item would be identify additional transportation revenue. Continuing the text in our program to say that this should be flexible for MPOs to develop solutions to the transportation issues in their region. We have added a couple of sentences here to acknowledge some legislative initiatives that we know about. So I'd like to have some input on saying, some specific ideas, such as ending diversions of transportation revenue to non-transportation uses, and also redirect a portion of the motor vehicle sales tax to fund transportation. That currently goes to the general fund. So those are 2 issues that we've heard that there may be some legislative action on. And then the fourth item, we're still working with TxDOT and working through their commission on high-speed rail, but, is there some need for legislation that would authorize TxDOT to have all the legal abilities that they would need to implement that high-speed rail, oversight, procurement, and anything that they would need to do for the development of high-speed rail. So those are the main actively pursue items. We did also provide you with a long list of items to support and monitor. I'm not going to go through that. I think if anyone has questions about those, I'll be happy to take those. But it really, these are ideas that come from all of our program areas, so they support a variety of topics. And it's really there to have a flexible position that if legislation does come up, we don't have to come back to the RTC during the middle of a legislative session and say, oh, would you like to take a position on this very specific topic? We already have a position on it. These would not be the focus of the RTC actions, but COG staff would monitor it and provide you information. And so I just wanted to let you know what our staff will do to keep you guys informed about transportation bills during the legislative session. We'll start in November with our weekly legislative updates that you would have gotten during the last session. We'll talk about highlighted bills, upcoming hearings, summary of past hearings, and so forth. We'll send those out to you on Mondays so that you have a good idea of what went on the last week. And then once the committees start to regularly hear bills of importance, this should be about midway through the session, we'll start sending you an email on Fridays to say, hey, here are the important committee hearings that will be going on next week, and here's the bills that they'll be hearing, so that if there's any RTC members that need to go down, that you're at least alerted, a few days before that. And so that's my contact information, and I'd be happy to take any questions on legislative issues.
Great. Judge? All right, I have 2 questions. Under legislation to support under planning and the notification requirement for natural gas well drilling, and I realize it's interstate and state highways mentioned here, but, if we're going to take a position, I don't know why we couldn't support on any road. I mean, our county roads, because we're dealing with destruction of those, and we're dealing with different funding issues with the state on that. So, if we're going to get any legislation through, then maybe we could add county notification as well, because Railroad Commission stays about a year behind, if you go to their site trying to determine where things are.
Okay.
So, and it would have 2 purposes: one, the roads, but also from an emergency management standpoint to know where those are without finding them. The next thing under legislation to monitor, I interpret that as not really taking a position, but yet when you read a couple of the items, it does. And so my question really is on the red light cameras, if the RTC is taking a position one way or the other, or it's just to monitor what the legislature does and each city will do their thing.
I think that when this legislation was first passed, the RTC did support the red light cameras, and then there was an issue the next session after that the state was interested in, okay, well, we've allowed this, but now we want to take half the money. And so I think this position, this has been here for quite a number of sessions now, is to protect the cities have this authority, so to protect that authority for the cities, but also to protect that the revenue would not be swept by the state.
Okay, so it deals with the revenue, not whether the cameras already exist or not.
Well, I think it does say maintain local authority to implement red light cameras, so to not take that authority away.
Great. Councilman?
Yes, sir. The red light camera revenue, which fund does it go to in the state?
It would not. It does not. It stays with the cities. That was an attempt, or a bill was introduced that would have taken half of the revenue, but that did not pass. And so we've kept this as a position to monitor. So that no.
I'm of the understanding that half of it goes to the state. I want to know which fund the state puts it in. The highway fund? Or?
I'll find that out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I don't think it's the highway fund. I think it's general revenue. Now, the RTC does not have a position to try to get that back. That's something you may want to think about over the next 30 days, but I believe half of it is taken and half goes to general revenue. Now, you may want to talk about it being dedicated for transportation purposes or something.
That's where I'm headed. I'd like to see it today.
That's something we need to think about for bringing it back when we ask for your final action.
Mayor?
Just the information, the half that the state takes is dedicated to the trauma fund. So, and it hasn't gotten there, but that's where it's supposed to be going.
Great. Any other questions or statements? Okay. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to item number 10. And let's see, Chad, you're going to talk to us about Metropolitan Transportation Plan Amendment and Conformity Analysis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. At last month's RTC, I provided an information item on the Mobility 2035 2014 amendment, which is shown on the screen as the strategic amendment to the region's Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And I also provided this council with a draft list of projects we have developed working with our regional transportation partners, which staff believes should be included in this 2014 amendment. Today I'm again providing an information item for your review in advance of next month's scheduled action item on this amendment. As you recall from last month, we've split this list of projects into two categories, those which have a significant change in them from the previous MTP, which are shown on the screen right now. And last month I went through all 7 of these. This time I'd just like to cover the new projects which are being proposed to be added to the 2014 amendment. And those are the ones that are shown in this map in orange. The first project there, labeled number 1, is the addition of main lanes to the SH 114 freeway in the Trophy Club and Westlake area, which would make that a total of 6 freeway lanes in that area. The project labeled number 3 there is the Blacklands Corridor Toll Road. For the past 15 months, COG staff have led a feasibility study in the Blacklands study area, and of the many recommendations which are coming out of that study, one of them is the Blacklands Corridor Toll Road, which staff now believes should be included as an MTP recommendation. And the third project is, you see there in southern Ellis County, listed as number 7. That is the widening of the Interstate Highway 35E from 4 to 6 total lanes, which would make I-35E 6 lanes throughout Ellis County, down to the Hill County line. This information will also be included in the electronic item provided online. You can see we have a table with the location and proposed changes for each of those projects. This will also be included in your mail out before the action item next month. Now, in addition to these major projects, we've also identified a number of projects which are more minor in nature and have a change in staging, typically just when the project will be built or when it's anticipated to come online. And also included in this list are a handful of grade separations and strategic bottleneck projects. And again, as of last month, I won't go over these individually, but I can if you have any questions about them. And similar to the major projects, we of course have a table with location and proposed changes for each of these, which will be made available online and in your packet before the action item. Now, looking at the cost of the 2014 amendment compared to the 2013 update, the current Metropolitan Transportation Plan, you'll see that there are not a lot of significant changes in each of these categories apart from the freeways, tollways, and arterial section, and the change there is primarily due to the change in staging proposed by TxDOT for the Loop 9 corridor. So for the Mobility 2035-2013 update, the cost for the entire plan was $98.7 billion, and the cost for Mobility 2035-2014 amendment is at $94.9 billion. The funded roadway recommendations map, which will be included in the 2014 amendment, basically this builds on the current map in the 2013 update. So this map is in the current MTP, and what this does is it adds those projects that I detailed earlier. So the project in Trophy Club, the Blacklands Corridor, and I-35E in Ellis County are all now included in this map. And of course, we update all of the relevant maps in the MTP as part of this process. So included with that as well are the funded transit recommendations you see here. Two changes to highlight on this map. First is the extension of the Dallas streetcar in the CBD of Dallas, which is one of the projects included in the 2014 amendment. And another change is the orange line, DART's orange line to DFW Airport. Since the 2013 update was adopted, obviously that project is now complete. So we're happy to be able to show that now as part of the current system. So as part of our amendment efforts, we are also working on an air quality conformity analysis for the 10-county non-attainment area within the MPO, which is on the screen now. So our nitrogen oxide and volatile organic compound budgets for the 2014 amendment remain the same as they were in the 2013 update. As well, we are using the same emissions model in determining our vehicle emissions from the region. So looking at nitrogen oxides in particular.
Chad, if I could just flag,
Yeah.
This was the area that Ms. Grayson was getting into previously with where do you record the benefit. So here's this budget line for the next two slides. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, exactly. So the air quality modeling for the amendment shows the region to be below the budgets, continuing the trend of improving toward the out year of the plan. And then also just to highlight what Chris and Michael had mentioned earlier, the RTC initiatives are noted specifically on these slides as well. You can see there in the 2014, the initiative of 4.97 tons per day. Similarly, with the volatile organic compounds, we remain below the budget and continue that trend toward the out year. And again, the RTC initiatives of 1.06 tons per day are included on this chart. So updating you on our schedule, we concluded our public meetings related to the amendment just yesterday. This is the third information item for this council, and we are still on schedule to return to the council with an action item at your October 9th, your next meeting, with, again, anticipated federal highway approval by November. And again, following the adoption of the 2014 amendment, we will begin work on Mobility 2040. And as opposed to this very strategic amendment, the Mobility 2040 will involve a thorough review of all the projects, programs, and policies in the MTP. It will employ new regional demographics and financial forecasts, and it will also take into account any new planning requirements which come about due to legislation or related rulemaking. I have my contact information and for the MTP staff here, as well air quality staff contacts if you have any questions related specifically to the conformity analysis, and I'm happy to take any questions now.
Thank you, Chad. Is that, Cindy, is that you? Or?
Yes. Okay. I was wondering if the public participation process was completed on the Blacklands corridor, because I noticed it's included in here, and the last I thought I heard was that meeting had to be canceled, and so did you have another meeting and you've gotten the public participation process finished?
Yeah, a few pieces of information on that. As you say, the meeting, yeah. Just wanted to.
Let me give it a try, and then Chad, you can add if you wish.
Awesome.
We were entering the fifth of a series of 5 meetings in that corridor. We were working with 100 to 200 folks coming out, and then I would say in meeting 3 and meeting 4 we had reached consensus on a comprehensive approach to that part of the region. We need improvements to Interstate 30. We want a fresh new look at US 380, but a tolled facility in the middle of that corridor creates an opportunity to pull 75,000 or more onto a new facility, some of which is on 380 and some of which is Interstate 30. The information was handed out. I don't know, we had 600 or 800 people show up to that particular public meeting. And I just want to read into the record here for those that will watch this. Notices went out yesterday. On September 22nd at 6:30, we will be in the Rockwall Performing Arts Center to hold that particular public meeting. So the answer to your question is no. You should remain silent on the benefits of that particular project until we complete that public meeting. And we will be live streaming that public meeting as well as part of that particular process. So we wish to get to what is the 150 to 800. What is the issue of the additional 500 or 600, and is it based on some particular fact that we're doing wrong, or is it based on information that isn't maybe what it is we're proposing to do? But that's what we wish to sort out at that public meeting.
Well, I mean, I think it's an excellent idea. Usually when 500 or 600 people turn out, that's because they're unhappy about something. Happy people don't usually turn out.
That's right.
And so I was just surprised to see this in here already, because it seems to me that we're going to have to take into account what we hear from those folks at that meeting.
Oh, absolutely. But this is not an action item for you today.
Not yet, but it's coming up.
That's right.
And so I just wanted to be sure that we were going to have that public input before we went ahead as a body and acted on something that maybe 600 people
I would never do
want.
that to you, and we would never do it to them. So
Because they could all be here, yeah.
September 22nd, we were anxious to hear their issues and see what we can do. But you're correct. We do not get 600 people to come out and when
say
they're
thank
happy.
you, right.
Yeah, that never happens.
Rob, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed 2 projects, Southern Gateway and Loop 9, were both delayed quite a bit. We have CDA authority for those from the last legislative session. Can you help me reconcile the delay in those dates and still having the CDA?
Well, I don't know, Chad. I didn't notice what dates did you push them back? Because we will talk about them again in item coming up.
2029 and 2035, I think, was the between date.
Right. That on Southern Gateway, TxDOT is they're changing what we had in the previous plan in terms of their stage. They are staging it differently. They are staging some elements of that. I believe the managed lanes for the entire corridor actually sooner than they were before. But then some of the main lane proposals would be pushed out further.
Now,
so it's really kind of a change of all the different lanes in the different conformity years.
Now, in the plan group, I want to separate what the plan group does and the TIP group. In the plan group, you have 3 or 4 points in time, and it's opened in that phase.
Right.
So remind us what those.
Settle down.
Sorry.
Remind us what those phases.
Okay.
Sure.
Remind us what those years are in your phases. So we make sure Mayor Frankie's interpreting your staging correctly.
Right. So obviously we use 2014 as our base year, and then 2018, 2028, and 2035.
So any project that opens up one day after 2018 shows up in the 2028 network.
Network, yes.
So since he's doing air quality conformity of phases, he's shown it to be open in 2028. It could be open in spring of 2018.
Okay.
So you have to go to the transportation improvement program to see if it's really opening up, because he's doing phases of just 4 points in time.
I was wanting to make sure it didn't mean we were pushing these projects further out.
I have no knowledge of us pushing back. I know we had to redo, Kelly, some environmental things on 35E. You'll see it as our number one priority when we get to that item in the agenda.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good.
Mayor Marchant.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a few comments on the Blacklands corridor, and subject to, I guess, what the public response is, I will probably be asking this body to strip that out of this amendment. I spent a lot of time over the weekend learning more about that, and there's a few things that concern me. I just ask everybody to think about before we have the action item next month. One is that it'd be a private company that would be exercising the eminent domain, which is sort of an unusual situation. That's one thing to think about. The second thing to think about is that in our current 2035 plan, there's 4 levels of congestion that are represented by colors. Everything east of the lakes is light pink, even in 2035. So that, and we just did that last year. So light pink means everywhere is light pink. So if that's the congestion level that equals a toll road, then literally the entire region would probably be feasible. The other thing is, and I think we need to just think about, I don't know that feasibility equals should do it all the time. I think it means that's the, now we ought to start thinking, should we do it or should we not do it? And then the other thing is sort of to understand more about maybe the difference, if there are differences, and I know there are, but some differences between the SH-130 from Austin to Seguin that is having pretty profound financial problems that I'm sure at some point made great sense on paper, and understand that. I think it's a cautionary tale that we ought to at least understand fully before we move forward authorizing this Blacklands corridor. And I think we all have sort of, we do toll roads as a last resort. I think that's just, we've been put in the position to do that. And I don't know if we're at that point on this particular corridor yet. So we have a lot of time to think about it and listen to other public input, but those are sort of my thoughts ahead of the action item next month. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, for your input. Brian, was that you or Mark?
I'll go.
Okay.
Kind of what the mayor said as well as what Sandy said, and that is that my impression is that at least in the Rowlett area, because at some point the line was between the north end of Ray Hubbard and the south, the dam obviously of Lavon along 78. And I understand now that they've kind of tailored those, and that there is at least 2 or 3 lines on a map now. And usually you get people out when there's a line on a map, and the line is too close to where I live, have my house moved to the country, whatever it is. In those earlier meetings, Michael, when you didn't have that large of a turnout, were there lines on a map, so to speak, or are we getting a little closer to where they think they want to actually build the road?
So you bring up a very good point. In the earlier meetings, yes, there was a line on the map, but the line clearly was this is a corridor, and the line was shown between the 2 lakes, because one of the things we had worked out with the public is why don't we minimize, quote, lake crossings as one of our criteria. And we spent a lot of time with Interstate 30 and 66 and working with some of the utility corridors that Garland Electric has and some other things. It looked like the ability of not using the 78 corridor, which was recently improved, and because of the new intermodal hub for KCS, additional redundant capacity needed to be put in place. And lots of us were wishing that that corridor would be north of the lake and in that window between. So a line was shown, and working with the public, one of our criteria is do not add another, quote, lake bridge crossing. Now, we're not responsible for the environmental. We're responsible to develop a system of transportation needs, get public consensus, and then once we have public consensus, bring that to you. We do have a private sector group, which may or may not be the builder of this project. That's not up to this body. That's up to TxDOT. And we have communicated to this group, my memory, Tom, 18 months ago, you got primacy with the North Texas Tollway Authority, maybe the North Texas Tollway Authority may be building this project. That's a TxDOT NDTA decision. That's not an RTC decision. But I think the mayor's point is there is interesting legal capabilities this group has that we all need to be aware of as part of this particular approach. Since they are doing the environmental under TxDOT's review, as you all know, all options need to be reviewed. So I'll bet they've looked at dozens of options. And as you look at options, you keep fine-tuning it, and I think they're down to 3 or 4 options. And yes, they are looking at a crossing in the shallow waters of that particular lake further south than what we had in an attempt to minimize displacements and so on and so forth. But that whole conversation of why the alignments and what you're trying to minimize, that's part of the presentation. And I think what's different, just to let you know, the previous presentations were us alone talking about a system of transportation needs. We wanted a clean baton pass between what we were doing, establishing the need, and then the handoff to the people doing the environmental. And we had already told the public that if the environmental is to proceed, we were going to recommend an oversight monitoring activity as part of the implementation. So we don't establish a need, think we have a set of transportation terms, and then all of a sudden the project turns different than what we were establishing that project. So yes, we had lines. Our line, Dallas County out to Greenville, we're working with the cities along the US 75 corridor. We want to build parallel capacity to US 75. So we're now thinking of using this gateway to actually build a new north-south transportation corridor west of Lake Lavon all the way to 380. So the point of bringing that last point up, it brings the desire to bring it further to the north, helps us if we're able to get consensus on a new north-south thoroughfare roadway improvement in Collin County.
Last question, just very specific, and that is the eminent domain package or part of this, as the mayor mentioned, is that something that is granted or allowed after the private entity commits, is granted the
well,
rights?
it's to you. It applies to you at DART and everybody. Eminent domain purchase of right-of-way can only occur after an environmental clearance. So you have to first be environmentally cleared.
Right.
Their particular position is under their statute, they have the right. They're a grandfathered toll entity. I'm not the lawyer. Ken or James could brief you. They have rights under the state legislature, under existing rights. No one can buy right-of-way until cleared, but their claim will be they don't need any new legislation to be able to purchase right-of-way. Okay. They're different in statute than NTTA. Okay. But some of us think they still need NTTA's approval because NTTA has primacy. They may not agree with that particular position. That's why we sent them a letter 18 months or so ago. You have 4 potential toll implementers. You have NTTA, you have a private sector company, you have Collin County, and you have the RMA from the Paris District. So we sent a letter out saying, hey, why don't you guys sort all that out and before we have to go to the RTC for approval, and that issue is no further resolved than it was when we issued the letter. And I think, April, why don't we send to the full RTC that letter we sent out, my memory is 16 or 18 months ago, asking for clarity on who the implementing agency is. But your need is independent from who builds.
Sure.
And we'll try to get some clarity from NTTA on that between now and your next meeting.
Thank you.
The next slide was Mayor Marchant again, and then I'll come back.
Judge, go ahead. I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I guess my question is, and I'm a little confused from a standpoint that this is a private entity, and I guess I'm trying to think back, and I know that the Japanese rail line is doing an an environmental. Is there a point at which the environmental doesn't have to be done if it is being done by a local government and or by a private sector owned?
No.
So if I go out and build a county road, normally I don't believe I have to do environmental.
Well, Judge, what did you do in your bond program? You
Well,
did.
it depends. I mean, just a flat local road
I
out here.
recall you built a road up to something and said, okay, now we're through, and it's up to y'all to connect it.
Well, I sort of told them we're going to build it, but anyway, it's a story for a different day. But the true local road that was our money, no environmental was done, and of course our argument was how far were they going to extend their authority? You know, they wanted 5 miles authority with local money, but where state or federal money was involved, we had to do environmental, and then we negotiated how much of an environmental was going to be.
And of course,
So if the private sector was building, if this private company bought all this land and now they own this land, and I guess maybe that's where it comes in as the eminent domain.
No, it comes in because TxDOT is overseeing their environmental, just like the Federal Railroad Administration is overseeing the high-speed rail environmental. They're doing an environmental just like anyone else is doing an environmental. TxDOT has that oversight. And they have to do an environmental because they're hooking up to other transportation systems, similar to when the judge approached Interstate 20, the Federal Highway Administration weighed in on how far up they wish to review his, quote, local roadway. But that project's going through an environmental just as if TxDOT or NTTA was author of the environmental. TxDOT has the oversight in the case of theirs. Federal Railroad Administration has the oversight in case of the high-speed rail.
Mayor Marchi.
And I hear that it's possible there are other entities. I think given all the co-presentations and the impetus behind the road, that it's very, very likely to be TTC. I think that's a fair statement. And I don't know if the lease that they have with that NETEX corridor puts them in a almost, double driver's seat to determine that they are going to be the party that does it.
Well, we already have come out that we will not approve a roadway on the NETEX corridor. So halfway through our feasibility analysis, the NETEX corridor, as part of our recommendation to you, is preserved for passenger rail and bicycle pedestrian and will not be used for roadways.
But do you agree with the statement that while other entities could do it, it's the likeliest party would be the TTC? And I hate to... Well,
I don't like really being put in that spot,
sure.
But it's a month for me being put in spots. I think with them approaching the legislative session, and with NTTA so strong with legislators, I don't think you could assume NTTA would pass on primacy, and so I'm not necessarily in that camp, especially during a legislative session, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Sure, I do.
Okay. Judge? On the eminent domain, very, very quickly, I understand how the statutes apply to us at the county level, and I share the mayor's concern about a private entity having that power, but you said they were grandfathered. Do they follow the same statutes or same guidelines that we have to follow as a local entity, or do they have some...
Let us answer that for you in maybe an email, and we will present it publicly to you at the next meeting. I know Ken researched that some time ago. He thinks they have the right of eminent domain as part of the authority granted to them. How it's different than you as a public sector agency, I'm not sure. So let us prepare a one-pager on that, because I think that is a very sensitive subject to you as an elected official, and we will get that clarified. And several of you are attorneys, and we'll send it to you and see if you have a similar interpretation so we don't mislead you at the next meeting. Thank you.
The only other question I guess I have is in regards to this, and I hear your comparison on the 130 down by Austin. That's pretty much the state, I believe, on that one, isn't it, or is it the central?
Well, in this particular position, staff is recommending to you, we are not putting any money in this particular project.
And making no guarantees.
And we are not making any guarantees, and we are not agreeing to any no-compete clauses, even though no-compete clauses were asked of us. And, but, I don't want to get the cart before the horse. I think the questions that you've raised are very good questions, but we are not seeking a financial partnership nor guarantor related to it. This was a particular entity that is interested in taking 100% of the risk.
Any other questions?
Yes. I guess my point is, and I think Collin County came
to the RTC and asked for assistance to look at the corridor and determine a need, not to determine a line on a map. I think the hearing, I was at the hearing that everyone talks about. In terms of what the presentation that was made by the RTC, again, it talked about the need in the region and to look at long-term planning to address congestion on the east side of the county. The lines on the map came from the private party, as y'all call it, who has acquired a toll authority that is grandfathered, that has their position as eminent domain rights. It's not, there was not a specific line on a map recommended by staff here. It was that the need is there. We need to, there was a recommendation that the NETEX, which I sit on that board, is not the right place to put it. It doesn't serve the needs. And
I think you agree with that.
Absolutely. And the concept that was just thrown out to Michael at the end, which is, to me, is very important, and which is what's probably driven the recommendation farther south, is to tie in and bring in a reliever on the west side of the lake to congestion and movement of people throughout the Collin County corridors, including 75.
Great. Thank you. Any further comments or questions?
So we all have homework to do, and we'll go over the tape and be prepared for those comments, both with the public and at the meeting next month.
Great. Thank you, Chad. And we'll move to item number 11. Michael, results of the public meeting on managed lanes, impact to US 75 and IH 635.
Well, we've been in a really very good position over the last month, starting with the commission being in attendance and hearing detailed reports from different parts of the region. It had a detailed report from local elected officials on US 75 and a detailed report from local elected officials, both city, county, and state, on 635. We've had two workshops given sort of this, hey, we don't really understand what it means by introducing a toll onto the HOV. Remember, we had presented to you, and I'll show you a map in a moment, 4 antiquated corridors that still have the interim HOV lanes, which is an old-fashioned structure that we shouldn't have anymore. And we told you 2 of these corridors could benefit from letting single-occupant users get on there early. And you said, well, go pursue that and see if that's possible. That's the place we are with regard to these. And again, I'll show you a map. And then we've been in public meeting this week, and staff proposed a solution on how to move forward with regard to this subject, of which we'll report back to you. So if we go to the 2 slides, they were in your packet. The orange facilities on this map you've seen before, these are the permanent facilities being implemented, tolled managed lanes, reconstruction of frontage roads, reconstruction of main lanes, the building of an express lane that is tolled, that can be managed for a dozen purposes. And then you have 4 antiquated, existing, shoehorned in because of the air quality issue 20 years ago. You have US 75 north of 635. You have phase 3 of 635, which is from Central Expressway over to 30. You have the barrier machine moving barriers on Interstate 30 from downtown out past 635. And you have Southern Gateway on 35E to the south and onto 67. The oranges have advanced. The 4 interims should have advanced years ago. We have a financial crisis. We're still struggling with those corridors, but we have a proposed path forward. If you look at your electronic item 11.2, which is here, this next graph, this is staff's recommendation to you. It's not for action, but we did want you to sleep on this. So here is the resolutions we do with the North Texas Tollway Authority. So we had previously advanced the Southern Gateway. You have a resolution in place. The legislature supports it. There There were no interim improvements scheduled for that corridor. We didn't ask for them. You didn't ask for them. That particular corridor is in a little bit of a shambles, largely because the horseshoe is being built. You can't unload it. So there was no interim solution. That is in the final stretches of the environmental study that TxDOT is doing. We're anxious to move forward with the permanent solution of 35E. There is no interim use to be discussed. 635, as you heard earlier today, is the proposal that should be advanced with this legislative session, 2015. Staff is going to suggest that you should proceed with the interim improvements on 635, the introduction of single occupant vehicle users on 635. This is at your RTC direction. We're proposing 3 parts that we would bring back to you. First would be an action item that says to proceed with the interim. You've already allocated the money to make those particular improvements. Second, request legislative authority to make this a permanent. And third, come back with the typical resolution we do. Revenues collected on the corridor stay on the corridor. So the 635 corridor, what revenues are being collected would be kept to help pay for the permanent solution on that particular corridor. The recommendation on US 75 is different. I think there's an opportunity, Mayor Maska partnering with Representative Leach, partnering with other mayors along the corridor, the representative partnering with other state representatives from Collin County. I think there is a chance for those state representatives to take this case to the legislature and say, is the correct balance of toll facilities where you wish them to be in the state of Texas? And I've told you, I would love to see this pendulum swing back and have the legislature and Congress take their responsibility to fund the transportation system, because it's on the state system and these are federally designated routes. These freeway facilities should be funded by the legislature and Congress. You've been in the unfortunate position of having to pick up the pieces over the last 15 years. If this pendulum can swing back, I think it'll be a terrific day. And you don't need to be in the middle of all these particular corridors. And Brian and Kelly can go do what TxDOT should be doing, where you help them prioritize the project, but you're not sitting there with 43 policy issues related to each of these particular corridors. I think the best way to move forward on a new legislative initiative is to actually put US 75 on hold. Do not advance the single occupant HOV facility on US 75. Give those legislators and those mayors a chance to have a conversation with their colleagues and see if they can move this, constitutional vote in November, make that positive, and, find another $3 billion beyond that to meet the needs that TxDOT said would be met. I think it indicates a willingness on the part of you as policy officials to work with the state representatives. Most of this is coming from Collin County, and these Collin County state representatives want to aggressively address this particular issue. And I think one of the best strategies you could potentially suggest to them is, okay, we will put our US 75 HOV project on hold and give you a chance to see what you can do and move this pendulum back as part of that process. Staff feels the 635 project should not be held up in the interim. Especially with local elected officials and state representatives aggressively supporting the 635 improvement, the correct balance is to advance 635 and hold back the US 75, at least until the end of the legislative session, to see what opportunity exists. I think you should go as far back and say, okay, those interim funds we had, let's put them back in the pot. Not only are we putting the project on hold, we're going to put the funds back in the pot, and then you see where the legislature goes in May. If something requires you to put money back from the pot, we'll take the request from you as local officials at that particular point in time. So 635 is a move ahead. We have not received any concern to date from a user of 635 that wasn't interested in getting access to this corridor. We have received lots of folks on the US 75 corridor asking us not to proceed, and I think we should turn that into an opportunity to support our legislative delegation. So to finish, just so, okay, Michael, where are we on these blue lines? 35E is slotted first. 635, if you approve, would be slotted second. US 75 would be slotted third. And TxDOT is now taking the lead to go back out on Interstate 30 and get consensus on Interstate 30 in the downtown Fair Park area. Because we're moving barriers, we don't have an interim solution there. We only had it on the two corridors that we had asked for. TxDOT has the lead on 30. You have the lead on what's next on 635 and 75, and TxDOT has the lead on 2013. If US 75 gets delayed further, then 3 years from now or 2 years from now, whenever that is, then I-30 may pop up, and we still don't have consensus on the US 75 corridor. But my hope is, by going into a peaceful communication, listening, legislative process, by May we'll all understand the issue better, and we will then have our local elected officials in the corridor making a recommendation back to the RTC on how best to address this particular corridor. The final piece to give you, you have an item 11.4. This was a request of TxDOT. This was not a request of ours. I probably would have not made this request because I'd rather resolve issues within the region, but TxDOT made a request to the Federal Highway Administration making interpretations of how you possibly can advance on an existing HOV corridor. I would take this letter and put it aside. I don't think it's real germane on what is really a policy question for you right now. Advance 635 and give our legislative delegation a chance to move this pendulum back on funding transportation in a traditional fashion. Several of you have spent lots of time on this issue in the last month. Mr. Chairman, you may want to hear from some of our elected officials, and I'll stop there and take any questions that you have.
Judge?
Yeah. Michael, under our current policy, as we're envisioning it, if you're an HOV user, to get your free HOV usage, you've got to go online and announce that you are going to use it in, at least 15 or 30 minutes before you use it that day?
That would be true on all of the orange facilities. If you go back on a page, Chris, to get the 50% discount on the permanents, you would have to somehow register either online or in an app, and I think you can register up to 5 days in advance to get the discount. In all the blue facilities, as of today, you can just be a 2+ user. You just travel on it because no one else can travel on those lanes.
I'm sorry. I'm asking, as we implement the policy,
if you do approve the 635, HOV users on the 635 section, so they don't get charged, would have to somehow indicate to us they're an HOV user.
Okay. And on the gateway, when we're looking into the future, are you saying that someone who is currently traveling with their friend or spouse to work will eventually have to designate that they're using it in order to not be charged?
Well, it'll be interesting. I think we'll have a replacement technology by the time that project opens. But
assuming there's no replacement technology, are we ever contemplating that people that are using a free road now will have to affirmatively do something?
Right now, when you're on the short phases of 635, you register that you're an HOV user to us, so you don't get charged.
That concerns me for this reason. Realistically, people are not going to do that. You're going to have busy people who are traveling together, and they are people that qualify to use it free, but they didn't have internet access or time to do that. And at that moment, I think you're tolling you're basically tolling what was a free lane to that person. Could we not look at maybe stickers or something rather than hitting you with a toll every time you use it?
Well, we've been around that tree. We'll be happy to go around it again. We agree with you. That's why we're replacing a conscious designation with technology on the vehicle.
But there's no technology yet.
Yeah, we think there's 5, and we're going to go through a procurement process to bring it to the region. But today, it doesn't exist, so we have this interim app. But I agree with you, that's not the best path forward, which is why we're getting technology. And yes, we'll go around the tree again and see if there's some other way we can do it.
You're telling me 2 things, and one of them gives me comfort and one worries me. You're telling me that there is...
My wife says the same thing.
Well, you're telling me there is existing technology, but we just hadn't gone to an RFP on it yet. Is that right?
Yes.
Because then we can get that fixed before we ever hit anybody with these fees.
Well, unfortunately, 635 has opened, and North Tarrant Express will open, I believe, this month or early October. October 4th, thank you. So those are going to have to use an app, but we think there's a technology. We're going to do a procurement of in-vehicle and out-of-vehicle technology that will do occupancy verification without the user having to designate I'm an HOV user.
And how fast will that come online?
We're moving pretty. We think Dallas-Fort Worth is advancing the technology of that particular item. And right now, we think there are 5
but like
vendors.
6 months or a year?
Yeah, 6 months or less.
Great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Duncan, is that you?
I want to support the recommendation that your staff's made on the interim solution on 75. Let's let our local delegation in Collin County and our mayors and all of us together try to really push funding and moving this pendulum back from toll roads back to pay-as-you-go model and see what they do. Absolutely. And then at the end of May, reassess at that point.
We share a light, so it's just convenient. I'd also like to weigh in on this, and I have been in the firestorm of this conversation. So I do want to kind of give everybody an update. I, too, support as presented. I think that we had a full briefing at the Richardson City Council this past Monday on this topic, and there's been a lot of conversations about what the mayors think and what the mayors don't. And my colleague, Steve Terrell's here from Allen, and I have been in regular communication with our state legislators, Jeff Leach, Linda, who will potentially have the Dallas County portion of US 75. And I think my message is we're not that far off in terms of what we're looking for. And it seems that this toll topic has derailed a bigger conversation that needs to take place, which is how we're going to increase capacity on US 75. That's ultimately what the local officials are interested in. We have been in lots and lots of meetings over a number of years, not only with the local officials up and down the freeway, but also with TxDOT and anybody who has a stake in this. And so really when we went before the commission a couple of weeks ago, all we said was, one, we were very happy that there's this attention being placed on something that is very important to all of our communities. Number two, we want a seat at the table. The decision and the plan that eventually comes out of it, to me, I think also presents a very unique opportunity to perhaps do something in a way that we've never done. And I think it's going to take a lot of creativity and innovation, and I think it's going to involve the state folks, the county folks, and the local folks. And I think that it's really important that all of those stakeholders have a seat at the table. And so that's really what our message is. And we would love to see the legislators come up with ultimately what has to be resolved, which is how are we going to fund this? So Richardson would very much be in support of your recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Is that, whose slide is that, Mayor?
It's mine.
Okay.
I just wanted to say I haven't heard any hints today that 635 could be singled out in the same way, in the same conversation. And I would just caution everybody to please not do that. If you were to go take a picture on 75 and take a picture on 635, show it to an unbiased user, they look very similar, but the projects are totally different. We're looking for a CDA authorization on 635. This project is very important for us to be able to move forward, to be able to gauge how successful that's going to be. So somewhere along the line, somebody's going to say, well, these look awfully a lot alike, but please don't make that comparison. And I support all my fellow mayors on 75 and their approach, but they're totally separate. So, and I use 75 more than I use 635 because I live in North Garland. But I appreciate it. Please don't connect the two, and let's keep them separate. And I appreciate all your support to keep going on 635 as quickly as we can, the same as you've been doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a lot over here. Rob, is that yours?
Just briefly, first of all, I support it totally. I think it's a good solution that y'all propose. I have all the confidence in the legislature's authority to fix this situation. The one caution I'd throw out is let's be careful, because I think Prop 1 will pass, it's likely, to declare Prop 1 success, and that becomes a solution. I think the solution is broader than that, and we just need to have that understanding.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Mayor?
I'm not going to weigh in specifically on this. I think this, though, is the process you guys are going through is a microcosm of what we're going through writ large in the region. I mean, it is, right? So, we want capacity. How are we going to do it? And in this instance, it's been great to hear the legislators, many legislators, say, hey, we're going to go solve this. Give us a chance. My cynicism aside, I hope they do. And I would like to ask this body to consider maybe extending that to any new toll or managed lane project other than these items. So until June, we don't advance new projects, the next Blacklands Corridor, whatever, to sort of help draw a finer point on hoping that, putting faith in the legislators to do that. I think theirs separate. I don't want to bog that down, but I think extrapolating that out larger for the region could be something that might be a good idea.
You're not. I apologize. You're not suggesting 635.
No,
no.
I'm saying
other than that,
excluding those projects and projects that are already in place and under construction.
My only hesitation there is I don't think there's going to be that many more projects or things that we're going to be starting between now and next. I just don't want to stop work on that may be undergoing or may be being undertaken at this point in time on the hope that all of a sudden either the state or the Congress is going to wake up and say, golly, we need to fund transportation.
It's possible. Okay.
Let's keep hope alive. It'll happen one day. Okay. I will see if there are any other, Mayor. I'm not sure there are. The Blacklands is a recommendation to put in a plan. It's not necessarily moving forward, but I hear you loud and clear, and we will integrate that in those recommendations coming forward.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, you have your progress reports at your locations. Remember, October 9th, I think lunch, then 1 o'clock is the workshop, 2 o'clock would be the meeting, and thank you very much. We're adjourned.